are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
So, Stephen, why don't you kick us off here? Give us a little bit more of your background, anything that you want to share. Yeah, I turn it to you.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it well. Obviously based in Metro Detroit. My team really sells assets nationwide. We focus primarily on opportunities and assets east of Colorado, north and south, kind of all over the place. Really from a technology standpoint, have been getting ourselves very active selling properties via auction. So trying to be at the forefront of what technology looks like in the commercial real estate business today. As Zach, you and I have discussed before, it's the laggard really in any industry that we've been finding. Commercial real estate and technology have never really been married together, but through organizations like yourself and others out there, we're seeing a ton of VC movement there, and a lot of new companies come about. So it's an exciting time to be in this space. And I think as people our age and younger, as we mature in this space, technology is going to continue to ramp up. And so I think it's an exciting time to be here. And so, happy to answer any questions that you guys have for me today, as well as the audience. I'd love to, answer questions interactively and kind of make this, a two-way kind of chat today.
Absolutely. Thank you for the background. And as you know, Stephen, as some of the audience may know, actually just prior to joining Shadow last year, I spent a few years in the commercial real estate industry as well. And I mean, it was mind-blowing to me, kind of what you were just touching on, how backwards and behind the real estate industry, one of the largest, if not the largest asset class in the world, how behind it is in the sense of technology and innovation. So that really, on a personal level, is what motivated me a lot to kind of double down and move into the, let's call it prop tech, whatever you want to call it, space, to really help identify, and find those new technologies that can drastically disrupt, all facets of real estate.
Absolutely.
So I guess, Stephen, if you, why don't we start with just kind of an overview of sort of how you're looking at real estate right now. We're not going to go too deep into real estate for the sake of real estate. Of course, we're going to tie it back to technology, but if you could just give us an overview right now of, what you're seeing in the real estate market, let's say in Detroit where you are, but you transact nationally. So across the country.
Yeah. So very interesting. As you pointed out, you and I, kind of had a very similar conversation back in March. And I think there was a lot more uncertainty, unknowns at that time, clearly, from the virus perspective, as well as from the economic side of it as well. Strangely, fortunately, opportunistically, we've been seeing a ton of transactions take place really since that conversation. Pricing as a whole, on the sales side has definitely been adjusted downwards from where we were this time last year to be expected, but this definitely is not 2008 yet. It may not become that type of environment, but it definitely is not that environment today. I think a lot of it has to do with the lending environment that we're in as well today. But transactions are getting done. There's definitely a lot of, cautious activity out there. From a leasing perspective, in urban environments, in the New York cities of the world, in the Atlantas of the world, the Chicagos of the world, that is very stagnant, and I think will continue to be that way into the into the future. But activity is there, buyer activity is there. Fortunately, lending activity is there, sellers are there. So fortunately, we are all staying very busy. I know there's a lot of brokers that are kind of taking some time off, but for the brokers that are being very active, thankfully, we're seeing a lot of transactions take place, which is great.
Great. Okay. That's very good news, because, like you said, when we last spoke, you were giving some predictions, I think many of which have so far been very accurate about what was to come given COVID, although it was impossible for anybody to know quite, kind of the extent of that. But would you say there are particular asset classes that you're seeing that have very obviously weathered better than others? Yep. Like, for instance, is it fair to say that multifamily is doing okay in, relative at least to retail, which is doing probably terribly, right? Because people still need to live somewhere. And if you want, you can also touch on kind of this notion that people are fleeing urban cores to the suburbs, is that then adversely affecting multifamily? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So a good point. The two asset classes that are doing very well, and when I say well, what I'll say is really stable throughout, is both multifamily, whether it's Class A all the way to Class D, right? Any type of housing, as well as industrial, right? So the distribution space, manufacturing has stayed, very hot throughout. So that's very good to see. But specific to your point in terms of multifamily, with the moratorium that's out there on evictions right now, it is healthy. It'll continue to be healthy as long as the moratorium stays in place. I know a lot of people are behind on mortgage payments. A lot of people are behind on their rent payments. But again, a lot of people we're talking to, especially on the retailer side, are saying, hey, we would love to sell our shopping center to then buy multifamily because we see that as being the safeguard of the economy from a real estate play. I think that's going to stay, to be the case into the future. So I think that continues. But to your point, everyone around our cohort of age, I think, are talking at this point, who were at least in the window of now to 5 years, saying we want to buy a house. We want to buy a house in the suburbs. That's happening. I mean, if you look at the stats on Zillow and what's happening in the housing market, multifamily is definitely getting, from an urban environment, I think there's going to be some downside there. I saw an article the other day that there's 15,000 vacant apartment units in the city of in New York City right now. So I think that continues. But again, I think if you're a landlord on the multifamily side, it's a good protected place to be, as well as on the industrial side. And I think that's going to continue well into the future.
Got it. Yeah, because this takes us to the intersection of a few different kind of core topics here. So one of them is the state of the real estate market and like we're saying, multifamily. Another is COVID and what it's done as far as people working from home. If people are working from home in the suburbs, people have set up home offices. I'm sitting, well, it happens to be I'm back in New York City now, but I'm still sitting in a home office. I'm not in an office. So kind of what are you seeing from that regard? Are you seeing, at least in Detroit or the markets that you're working in, are most people still working from home? Yes, we know that the Twitters of the world, of course, have announced that employees can work from home forever. Those are tech companies.
Yeah.
But as far as your kind of average Detroit tertiary market, Quicken Loans, downtown Detroit, are people coming back to the office there yet? Or are people still working from home? And if they, in your opinion, will still be working home far into the future, should people then be worried about those apartments in places like downtown Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, I think the real concern is what happens to actual office space, both in an urban environment and in a suburban environment. I came back to the office officially right after 4th of July, so I've been back full time. I think our office, when it's running at full capacity, has about 200 folks in here at our headquarters. We probably have plus minus 30 here. My commute to work is not much traffic, to say the least. So yeah, I mean, to your point or your question, Quicken Loans I know is staying at home well into next year. I don't think they have plans to return back to the office anytime soon. So I think when you look hand in hand, office and multifamily, sure, people always need a place to live. Do people go back to the office day one when they're able to? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but everyone I talk to, I think, are itching to get back to work to some degree or back into the office to some degree, whether it's on a hybrid system or what that exactly looks like. But yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely going to see more vacancy, more availability on the office side nationwide. There's no question about it. We've always been overbuilt, both retail, both office in America. We're a shortage of multifamily. We're definitely a shortage of industrial. And I think we're going to see a lot of industrial start to go into retail if the cities will allow that from a zoning perspective. But yeah, I mean, we're in a weird time, right? We're at a point where most people don't have the opportunity to go to the office if they want to. So it's very easy to say 9 out of 10 people are going to continue to work from home into the future. I think once things stabilize, people are going to go back, whether that's 30%, 50%, 75%, no one really knows. But, from a collaboration perspective, there's a lot of work that gets done from a productivity standpoint in a positive light at the office that I don't think you can replicate at home.
Totally agree. Okay, so let's talk about innovation in real estate, specifically innovation through technology. Couple things. One is your firm, Friedman Real Estate, I know has been really a pioneer in adopting piloting technology. I think the last time we spoke, you guys were proud to announce, and as you should be proud to announce, that you had adopted over 80, or at least piloted over 80 different technologies throughout your business lines, which is incredible, right? I believe you have a team of people who are devoted to doing this, finding and piloting technologies. Is there anything you could tell us about that? And also in particular, I know that a lot of your business has relied on tech-based auction platforms such as 10X. So maybe you could tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah. So to your first point, to your first point, talking about the way we've implemented and tested and kind of been at the forefront of technology from our perspective. So our company, we manage about 22,000 apartments. Most of the technology that we have been implementing has been on the multifamily side. I think if you look at prop tech as a whole, a lot of that has either fallen into the multifamily side, leasing, as well as industrial office building type of technology. So the Yardies of the world, we've definitely been all over and stuff like that. We additionally to the apartments that we manage, we also manage and own about 15 million feet of commercial. So, and that's all spread out through the Midwest. So from a technology standpoint and able to run that efficiently, I know the team has really been at the forefront of utilizing technology. And I think that's going to continue, especially with, our executive team being on the younger side of the spectrum versus, some of the older companies that are, definitely antiquated if you look at their websites and stuff like that. So that's going to continue. I think companies that don't innovate are going to fall by the wayside. That's always been the case. But I think now that technology is moving into the commercial real estate world, that's going to be accelerated. And so the guys who are able to, keep up and implement will stay afloat and continue to thrive. The ones that, weren't able to, I think are going to go by the wayside. But that's kind of what we've experienced from the tech side, with startups and stuff like that. My business on a day-to-day, level has really been focused on staying innovative on the technology side through brokerage. And whether that means, utilizing Crexy, which is a new marketplace for listing properties and really having a broad reach of traditional listings, or to the 10X auctions of the world. We just find it, especially in today's, day and age, you could list a property in your backyard. You're really limiting yourself to, marketing that asset to people who are local in your market versus us listing a property in, say, Louisiana, where I'm up in Detroit and I don't necessarily visit the property, but being able to, hire a photographer to go take, drone photography, aerial photography, et cetera, listing it online and then, opening it up to the broad community nationwide. They're really looking for a rent roll. They're looking for the financials. It's able to, with property management today, kind of all over the place, it's easy to buy assets nationwide and be on the other side of the country to do so. So that's kind of how we have so far gotten ourselves in a position to thrive off of, technology that's available, but we're hoping that continues. And we're hoping there's a lot of, acceleration in that space going forward.
What percentage of your transactions, your closed transactions, would you say are facilitated by Crexy, 10X, or any of these technology platforms?
Today, probably 75, 80%.
Wow. And most of those, you never actually visit the property.
Correct. Yeah. As crazy as that is. I would say, most brokers are in their cars all day going to visit clients. My business, a lot of it is in my office, sitting on the phone, calling across the country. And a lot of it is because we have the track record. We've been doing what we do for a long time. But if you're able to tell a prospective seller, hey, we're able to bring 400,000 plus potential buyers to your property by listing it online, it's no different than if you sell something on Amazon, right? If you're selling a product in your store, your retail store, mom and pop store on Main Street in your local community versus listing it on Amazon, your potential buyer pool is that much larger. And so, there's certain properties that don't work from an auction or from a technology driven perspective today that is much more, relationship driven and, lower cap rate driven. So it's different, but I think that's going to continue to, move forward. People like ourselves who are used to being on our phones all day and buying, in an e-commerce type of world. Sure, you want to visit the property you're buying, but I don't think it's as important to be, hands-on at the properties that you're buying every day like it used to be in the past.
Right. Okay. So now historically, a lot of your sales have been large shopping malls in various states.
Yep.
I'm still astounded to hear that you actually have not visited most of those malls, but that's another story. What's happening there now? What's happening there just from a kind of a real estate perspective, from an innovation perspective as well? Like, are malls still selling? What is the space now being used for, in particular now with COVID? I mean, you've seen groups like the 555 group that own Mall of America and the American Dream that opened last year in Jersey and then immediately had to shut down with COVID. They have roller coasters and they have all this kind of stuff. Is that keeping malls alive? What sort of innovation are you seeing in that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways mind-boggling, right, to try to figure out what they're going to do with all of these malls, especially the Class B, C, smaller malls. We're way over retailed in this country. The strong malls, right, the Somersets of the world in Metro Detroit and Troy, Michigan, I think will fare fine, going forward. They're going to have, I don't know if there's a need to have 4 anchors at every mall in America. I mean, clearly you're seeing what's happening to the JCPenney's of the world. Macy's is obviously downsizing their footprint. Sears has been having the difficulties that they've had for, a decade now, but I think that continues. The big box retail struggles is an old story, right? There's nothing new there. We're going to see a lot more distribution there. We're going to see Amazon of the world come in. We're going to see a lot of self-storage companies come in and take vacant boxes. We're seeing the, general growth properties of the world who own malls buying out tenants of their malls and really becoming retailers from a private equity standpoint. So there's going to be distress there. It's going to continue. I think cities are going to have to become more lenient on the zoning side. Maybe you start to see some big boxes turn into multifamily. We saw some stuff happen in Metro Detroit. Ford Motor Company backfill the Sears here for office. So that'll continue. But, I was reading some articles the other day where they're talking about taking vacant boxes at malls and turning them into indoor golf simulators. That's a cool idea, but I don't know if you're able to do that. I mean, there's so many malls in this country. They're not all going to be able to survive. It's unfortunate. It's been an unfortunate reality for a long time. But when I drive around and you see Amazon trucks out there, every item that's on an Amazon truck is something that's not being purchased from a retail location. So, again, no one's got a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen, but that's a side of the retail business, malls, that I don't think fare well long term.
Yeah, and I know that Simon Property Group was going to buy Taubman Centers for like $4 billion, and then the pandemic hit, and it looks like now they've backed out.
Yep.
I mean, understandably so. Interesting.
Yeah, and I'll say, everyday retail, the self-service type of retail in terms of going to a grocery store, getting your hair cut, going to a bank, etc., that will continue to be fine in a retail setting. And I think the smaller shopping centers, the grocery anchored shopping centers, will fare well. But we're still selling a number of deals where a property may be 60% occupied today, but has been 60% occupied for the past 5 years. And there's buyers there. Like, our pricing is off maybe 25%, but we're not necessarily interviewing the buyers to ask, what are you going to do with the property when you buy it? That's not really a necessary question when we're representing.
Could be an interesting case study though, but yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But there's the activities there. It's not like we're listing 10 retail centers and one is trading. I mean, the activity is there. There's been a lot of money sitting on the sidelines for a long time. And I think a lot of people also think that they're able to do it better than the last guy. And so they're willing to take a risk on a property if they can buy it cheap enough.
Got it. Okay. So let me ask you this. Why do you think that across asset classes and across different branches of real estate, so many groups have been and continue to be, by and large, so slow to experiment with and adopt new technology? And what makes Friedman different? What led your firm to the point that it has now piloted 80? I mean, I don't know if you know how unusual that is. Like the vast majority of real estate firms.
I don't know because I only know from it, but I understand that it's unheard of for a company to experience that type of engagement. To the point, to your question, I don't know. I mean, I think, our company as a whole, we've always been very entrepreneurial. We're not just a brokerage house. We're not just a management company. We don't just own. We kind of touch all facets of real estate. And, we've got older folks here. We have younger team here as well. I think it's recognizing, and a lot of people who are here have come from other industries as well. And I think that's probably one of the major items to it is I was consulting before. Knowing what happens in other industries and other sectors, and you come into a place that's not doing it, I think you're asking yourself, you're scratching your head being like, how is every other industry in America, utilizing technology, but commercial real estate isn't. You start Googling, you start researching, you start talking to people, you start, networking. You want to start experimenting with what can be there. And I think it's an exciting, part of the business to be in today. But I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you, but I also don't know, because I'm always mind boggled to hear other shops being like, no, we just have our Rolodex of people we call, and, we don't even have a CRM. And it's like, well, how do you manage any of your leads? And like, they don't worry about it. And I don't really understand that.
I have firsthand witnessed brokers who make 7 figures a year every year and
Yep.
multiple times over, right?
Yep.
Who have never heard of a CRM.
Right.
Who use a notepad that they scribble on with a pen, and they cross out and they flip through the spiral pages, and it's unbelievable. And it's weird. It's ironic, because in a lot of those cases, it almost seems like if they were to start using a CRM, they would do worse.
Right.
I don't know how to explain that.
I agree with you. But I guess the question becomes, what does it look like for their team when those individuals retire and
Yes, exactly.
the buyer pool is younger, and the team that comes after them from a brokerage standpoint is also younger?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one other thing I want to point out is, it's interesting because a lot of these groups, these old school real estate groups that, were so resistant to change. Oh, it's just bricks. It's real estate. The tenants pay rent. Why do I need technology? Why would I waste money on that? It's broke. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
What you're seeing now, what we're seeing, at least here in New York, is a lot of groups that were so hesitant to change now must adopt technology to survive, because we're in a situation where, let's say, a lot of new 15,000, you mentioned 15,000 vacant apartments in New York City. I mean,
Yep.
that is unheard of.
Yep.
So we're in a situation now where landlords are desperate by and large, and they need people to come and fill those apartments. So what happens when a tenant comes along and says, listen, I'm good for the rent, but I can't put up a 2 or 3 or crazy number of months security deposit. I don't have that on hand to put down. So there are all these technologies now, or tech-enabled services that are out there that are innovating something as simple as the security deposit or the tenant screening process. We have a great company in our incubator program that's innovating the tenant screening process. Instead of relying just on a credit score, what if I, as a potential tenant, can prove, look at my bank account, pull from Chase, you can see that for the last 24 months, I've paid rent every month. So now these landlords that have never considered tech, many of them are being forced to look at and adopt some of these platforms. So actually, in a weird way, that's driving innovation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be the silver lining, right? There's silver linings in everything. You can look at you can look at it as positive, or you can look at a negative. The negative is there's mom and pop retailers that are not going to survive. It's terrible for the restaurant industry. We understand it. We feel for everyone. The positive is, to your point, there's going to be innovation on the real estate side for companies to survive. And so this is a really good time, a really opportune time for early stage companies to focus on commercial real estate and get into the space, because I think over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be an influx of new companies that come out focused on this space. And I hope it continues, not just in the multifamily space, right? I hope that all across commercial, industrial, office, et cetera, that it gets adopted and that it expands. But I think it's going to, because it's a really good opportune time for younger people to innovate and to start companies, and to go to VC firms and look to be part of incubator programs and to grow that way. And I think we're going to see that more and more as there's more downtime, throughout the winter, next year, et cetera.
Absolutely. And we're very excited about that. We have a whole new crop of companies that are coming to us that are building amazing things. They say necessity is the mother of invention. So yeah, I would absolutely agree. Okay, let's see. We're in the last couple of minutes here. If anybody has questions or thoughts or anything, feel free to jump in. We'll give it a minute or so to see if anybody does. And, if not, as everybody knows, we have the Slack channel afterwards. So, Stephen can be reached that way as well if you have follow-up questions. But let's just give it a second here. So it's a great turnout we have. Appreciate everybody coming to this session. Wow. So Stephen, what's that background you have there?
I believe this is just a Zoom background. I searched Zoom office buildings and I added it I don't know how to turn it off, actually. I don't know what city it is either.
I think it's Birmingham, Alabama.
I don't think that's accurate.
One of the buildings looks like the Harbert Regions Plaza, but I don't know.
Maybe you're right. Did any questions come in? There's got to be one question from someone.
We need some questions.
One question.
Okay, we have a question.
There we go.
Anonymous question. How much less business is your firm doing this year versus last year?
Yeah, so I don't have the specific statistics. I will tell you, if we compare leasing to sales, leasing has fallen off of a cliff. There's no two ways around it. And that's primarily office retail leasing. Sales have really have held steady. I think that's a lot of it to do with our relationships with banks and private clients that are always motivated to be selling properties. But yes, it is not the same volume wise than it was a year ago. That's for sure. But the positive is sales are still there. Leasing has really slowed down.
Okay, and then a sort of similar question that came in. Oh, we have two back to back, and then we'll probably wrap it up. One was, would you recommend that a young person enter the real estate business at this time, or do you think it's a bad idea?
It depends what they're going to do. It's a broad question. I think it depends. It's an opportune time for a broker who's focused and knows what they want to work on. It's a tough time if you're very vanilla to the business and don't know where you want to go. It could be a very cool time to work for a startup, though, in the space. There's a lot of different facets to this business. I'd be happy to talk to someone about their ideas, but yeah, it's an opportune time depending on where you go in real estate.
Right. Okay. One more question here. Have any new pieces of tech entered your daily workflow since the start of COVID?
Wow. So net new products, I would say no. But there's been iterations and improvements to the tech that we were using throughout. And I think a lot of those design teams have been working as like an opportune time to work on those projects. So whether it be the CRM we use, whether it be what auction is working on behind the scenes. And the company we use, 10X, for our auctions was actually acquired by CoStar during the pandemic. So that was, wild news to experience and go through it. Net positive to what we've experienced so far. But yeah, nothing brand new, but we're always testing new technology weekly. Let's put it that way.
Wonderful. Wow, Stephen, it's always great to have you for a fireside chat at Shadow Ventures, and thank you for coming to Summit today.
I appreciate it as well.
And your insight is always very appreciated. Everybody, I'll say it one more time. If you want to reach Stephen after this chat, you could do that through the Slack channel. And Stephen, keep killing it over there in the Midwest.
Sounds good. We'll talk soon.
Talk to you later.